Now, despite the transfer window not being open just yet, there has been a lot of transfer news coming for Arsenal every single day. Now, none have been quite like Viktor Gyökeres, who the reports keep ramping up about his rumoured move to Arsenal. So in this video, we're going to talk about the tactics around it and how he could fit in for the team if he was to sign. So let's get into it. Now, of course, this is not the first video we have done about Viktor Gyökeres, but I wanted to get a full video out where we basically wrapped up everything and my whole opinion about him in a more conjoined way, because I have watched him a lot over the last couple of months, so I feel like I have a good enough level to talk about his involvement within the squad. Now, of course, he is going to be a player that divides opinion. From the out, I will say that if him or Sesko comes in, I'm not really that bothered. I think there's qualities they both can bring to the squad, and I do think you're most likely going to see one of them to join Arsenal. I don't really think Isak's realistic, and I don't really think Arsenal have shown much concrete evidence and interest in other players, so I couldn't imagine them really coming in. Now, Viktor Gyökeres is a player that we all know, and I think his goal record is the thing that will always jump out. Now, a lot of people will sit there and defend his goal record, saying that he has to score goals against someone, and ultimately he has still scored goals at the Champions League level and also the international level for Sweden, so it's not like he's been playing bums every single week. Now, while that is definitely true, I do think that you have to take within certain contexts the goals that he scores against in his league. Now, he has broke incredible records there, and there's obviously been a lot of great strikers that have come from the Portuguese league who have never really hit this height, but that doesn't necessarily mean a 2-2 split on if he's actually going to come in and sort of translate that within the Premier League. So you have to consider that. And I think straight off the bat, if your real problem is the goals that he scores against weak defenses, then I think that is a fair enough point to have. I do think there's question marks around the consistent defense in the Portuguese league because it isn't very good. Physically, they're just not there, and Gyökeres is a guy that is very strong, but his strength, I think, is amplified by the fact that the defense is very weak in these leagues, and they really do get caught under the ball. In my eyes, dribbling perspective, I don't think Gyökeres is the best, but he made to look quite good in that league because the other players are useless. And even sometimes when he goes one-on-one, he'll maybe mess up a touch or mess up his impact on the ball, and straight away in the Premier players coming over and taking that off you. But in the Portuguese league, you can just run through people. But as a player, what is he like? So I found this by Scouted. I would recommend going to follow them on Twitter, where it basically compares Benjamin Sesko, Viktor Gyökeres and Kai Havertz in their involvement within their team and their attributes that they have. And as you can see, Gyökeres is a much more carry heavy player, has better shot location than Sesko and probably better placement, but you can see that he really struggles with a lot of the other things such as aerial, such as pressing, and even though his passing stats may be slightly better, some of this has to be in context within the league. Now, obviously, every single statistic, especially from different circumstances and context, has to be thought about. I see a lot of people bring up these pyramids and they have these stats with different players, but you've got to admit that someone playing for PSG every week is probably going to have a better output because they can do what they want compared to someone at Arsenal who has to play in the Premier League every week. That is something I kind of feel like with Gyökeres, and I feel like some of his stats are definitely inflated because of this league. I personally believe that his passing, even though it's not great, is a little bit inflated. I don't think he's a brilliant passer, although not tasked with it overall. And I do think his carrying as well in that space that he has in that Portuguese league is a little bit overrated as well. But in a 1v1, running at pace, this guy is deadly, and I will always see that with him. Now, first of all, what do Arsenal want from a striker? Now, there's a few things that Arsenal, I think, definitely need from a striker. But first and foremost, before we talk about the tactics, it's just about ball striking. Now, this is why I'm not someone that really wants someone like Jonathan David to come in, because he's known to be quite a poor ball striker despite scoring a lot of goals. And in my opinion, this is the best attribute Viktor Gyökeres will bring to the club. His shooting is elite. You can talk about the goalkeepers and the Portuguese league in this circumstance, but in my opinion, this is not relevant within this context because his goals are insane. I would recommend going to watch any of his goals in the last couple of years. Nearly all of them, from any angle, he absolutely gets insane power behind them and is able to smash that ball even near post, high into the net every single time. Now, you're not going to just lose that finishing ability, and even though there has been players that have scored a lot of goals in their league that have come into the Prem and maybe not been the best. I mean, Lacazette, for instance, he was a great player for Arsenal, but I wouldn't say he was that out-and-out finisher that we thought he was going to be. And I do think a lot of the time that was because of precision more than necessarily power. Now, Gyökeres has a brilliant ability. You can see it in the stats here that his placement is top and also his shot location is top. He gets shots away from great areas and is able to get into the box into high chance situations, and his brilliant shots always go in. That's the reason why he scores so many goals, because he gets gets in great positions, and ultimately he is deadly, which you have to be at any sort of level to score goals. He will definitely bring a different level of shot power and shot striking ability than someone like Kai Havertz. And as much as Gyökeres is not really a guy that's going to shoot a lot from distance, he can shoot from distance, which is something Arsenal needs. Not someone that we should be relying on to score from 30-35 yards out, but we talk about going against low blocks a lot, and the way that you can make teams move out of their blocks and kind of scare them into submission is by having players that have that X factor sort of quality and can shoot from many ways. Now, Benjamin Sesko is definitely someone a lot more associated to this, I think. He is much more of a long range shooter and actually elite from long range efforts, but his shorter range efforts aren't very good, and he still, I think, worries when he gets too much time to think, and sometimes really does miss the easy chance to score the big one. Now, of course, you could talk about Sesko and the development there, and we have spoke about it a lot, and how he can easily just get better over time, which I think is a fair enough point if that's the point you're going to make. But right now, Gyökeres will bring that shooting power and that shooting ability more than I think anyone else on the market that Arsenal are realistically going to sign. Now, although I said that I think his dribbling is a little bit maybe inflated because of the Portuguese league and the space that you get in these leagues, I overall don't think he is a bad dribbler. I think sometimes I've seen a lot of people say that holding the ball up and he kind of isn't as good as you think he is. And I think from a technical perspective, he probably isn't as good as some of the other players that are on the market. And I do think there's sometimes that maybe he's a little bit power over brains and makes some few mistakes, I think, picking out the right pass in certain situations. But he isn't certainly a bad player. When he does get into a rhythm of picking the ball up from deeper and running, he is good. Now, there's a few times maybe he rolls the defenders in the Portuguese league where I just don't think he's going to be able to do in the Prem consistently. But unless you're the top defenders in the world, he is still going to give you a big game. I mean, we saw it against us. He really did struggle in many ways against Saliba and Gabriel, although he did turn Gabriel at one point and get that shot away, which was a good effort. But when Kivior came on, he just ate him up, and that chance where he hit the post was a brilliant example of the powers that he has from deeper, being able to run by himself and progress that ball, and he's very quick when he has it. He is rapid considering how big he is and can just bulldoze players, which is a very good thing, I think, specifically in the Premier League, which may be very important. Now, I do think this guy is very strong. I do think that he has the ability to kind of bulldoze players, but I will say that is a little bit of a concern for me as well, because when it comes to sort of pushing players, a lot of the time in the Portuguese league, he kind of just runs into people, and I've said this a few times now, where he just shouldn't, and there is no reason to do that with the space that you have. And in the Prem, I've said it before, the refereeing's poor. You're going to give away free kicks like that, and also it's just not great to just keep running into players. You need him to run into that space, and when the space is going to be shorter in our league, I do worry about is he going to find them gaps. But with that being said, he is a player that does run in behind. Now, not all the time, he also comes short sometimes as well, which obviously is something that we are looking for with our striker. But when it comes to actually running in behind, he does it a decent amount, and he's got that pace, I think, over a short sprint to really get aggressively in behind if they open them gaps. And sometimes with Arsenal, it's not about someone making the right pass or right shot. It's just about having players that are willing to do things that people aren't. We've said it multiple times that when Havertz is in the team, he makes these forward runs into the channel where realistically we're never going to find him. We don't really pass the ball to him. They're more dummy runs, but it's more about the effect that gives on the rest of the team to create that space, which allows us to build up forward. Now, there's sometimes we definitely need to play these people in, and I think we are a little bit risk adverse, but there's also times where just Gyökeres making these runs in behind will let our team press a lot forward and pull players back, which can always give inside space to people like Saka and Odegaard. And ultimately, it's not a bad thing if you have a player always stretching them runs. It's one of the reasons why Jesus was so good in our team. Now, what I will say is that there is clearly still concerns with him that I do think have to happen. We spoke about how he's probably better in space. Is he going to get that space for Arsenal in a low block? But I'm starting to think I'm not really too worried about that as much as other people are. The reason why I say that is because I'm not really sure what Arsenal are going to do next season from a tactical perspective. But with the signing of Zubimendi coming in, who I think is going to be class, with the rumours of a winger that can maybe dribble and maybe play a bit transitional as well, I do think there's certain levels where Arsenal may try to be a little bit more off the ball than they have been in the past. Now, that obviously means a lot to a lot of the players. Like, will Odegaard really work in a system like that? I'm not sure. Is he going to be replaced? Are we going to buy an attacking midfielder? But there's definitely a level where we know Arteta can get the tactical level to change a little bit per year, but maybe he just goes for a complete reform. I think Liverpool this year have played quite an unorthodox way. They haven't really pressed very hard and kind of given the ball to players, but then being countered quickly, and it's worked so well. And obviously Man City, I think, are moving into that system as well. I'm not not saying it's like the best way, and Arsenal shouldn't necessarily give up their options to play with these players and play the same way as other teams do, but it's definitely a consideration Arsenal should have, at least buying different profiles where we can play different ways within the squad. And Gyökeres does operate as a different profile. He is very different to Havertz in many ways. I mean, even the fact that Havertz's best abilities are probably aerially and pressing, and I would say that's probably some of the worst attributes that Gyökeres has, it does mean we're going to have to play in different ways. However, what I said on Twitter, I still will say I abide to, and it's with the Sesko and Gyökeres debate, I am entitled to agree a little bit more with Arteta over Berta if the rumoured Berta versus Arteta, Gyökeres versus Sesko is a thing. The reason why is because I do think Sesko is a player that not only is more closer to Havertz in the way we've been playing from a pressing standpoint, he is more physical, he's better in the air. Okay, his finishing isn't as good and probably not anywhere near as Gyökeres, but he is young and can definitely develop that. And I think Arteta wants that sort of base platform that you have with Sesko to develop him into the player that he wants in a certain way under his mould. With Gyökeres, you can't do that. He is the player he is nowadays, and the team is going to have to change around him in order to make him work within the squad, or rather it being the other way round, where Sesko coming in, he would have to adapt and play to the style that we want. I also think the fact that Sesko is someone that analysts will know that every single data point he really does bang. I know his goals aren't the best, I know he misses a lot of chances, but people were saying the same about an Alexander Isak, about an Osimhen when he was at Lille. These things have happened throughout history, and strikers don't just bang out of nowhere. They take time to develop their attributes to get really good. And if Arsenal want a class striker for the future, Sesko is definitely the better option, but are Arsenal in a win now mentality? If we are, then we can't really afford to keep giving up years. And I hear you that I do think Sesko will still give a good level to Arsenal, and I think realistically we're buying a DM, we're probably going to buy another midfielder, defender, a left winger. There's a lot of changes within the squad where realistically it's not all down to that striker, so it might not be the end of the world. If Sesko scores 20 goals, that is realistically more than we've got this year, but I don't think he's going to carry us to a title by himself. I think Gyökeres has an opportunity to bang or to kind of flounder a little bit, but that opportunity to bang might be enough to even go for him. Now, what I will say is that Arsenal can change systemly to fit Gyökeres, and I do think he is better than a lot of people say. For people that are going to act like he's the best striker in the world, he really isn't, but I don't think there is on the market other than an Isak. And realistically, Arsenal, I think, are a good enough squad and a good enough system where we do just create a lot of chances. We saw it in the Champions League games, we saw it in this semi-finals of the Carabao Cup. They didn't come down to a tactical problem. We didn't lose because Arteta wasn't on form. We lost them pure games because we could not finish our chances. Yes, we created a lot of low XG chances overall, and that's kind of what Arteta's system is, but maybe Gyökeres can take them opportunities. I think if you're just looking for a pure finisher and you're not really thinking about too much, he can carry the ball, he's physical, then it makes sense. Now, I'm not sure about the wages being around 200k, but I guess it makes sense given the situation. He is also rumoured to be around about 50-55 million pounds, which, considering Liam Delap, in my opinion, is a younger, very similar player to Gyökeres in different ways, and people think Liam Delap would be a good option for 30 mil. I don't really think 50 mil for someone who's coming into his prime is the worst deal in the world. Now, of course, the summer hasn't started yet, but I think we are all kind of waiting for that sort of striker or winger situation to bang. I've had some more thoughts about Rodrigo after the video yesterday, and I do actually think he might be okay, but we'll obviously have to see. There's a certain level of getting talent, but also getting the right profile, so that we kind of have to find somewhere in the middle. I've gone back and forth what one I kind of want, but I do think there is a middle line where we can find both, and we should be good enough to really be able to get these players to come to the club, but we'll have to see. But thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think about Gyökeres overall. Do you think it'd be a good fit? Do you prefer Sesko? Because obviously it's a big debate right now. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.